What could happen if, God forbid, the Third Republic of Somalia were to collapse? This projection is grounded in the geopolitical realities of the Horn of Africa. Somalia is a country rich in resources, yet poor in living conditions, located at the strategic crossroads of Africa, the Arab world, and Asia. If Somalia's central government were to collapse, the impact would not remain an internal Somali issue. It would extend beyond the country's borders and reshape the balance of power across the entire Horn of Africa. By collapse, we do not mean the disappearance of Somalia as a nation, but rather a situation in which central state institutions lose legitimacy, unified national forces fragment, and the state loses its ability to make and enforce decisions. In such a scenario, federal member states would gradually transform into de facto independent powers, each pursuing its own political, security, and economic agenda. The collapse of the Somali state would immediately create a massive security and political vacuum that could not be filled quickly. This vacuum would trigger widespread instability across the region, particularly in maritime zones. Somali waters would no longer be secure, competition among foreign powers would intensify, and the Horn of Africa would become an open arena for geopolitical rivalry. Historically, whenever a central government collapses, power shifts to the regions, and Somalia would be no exception. Somaliland would likely emerge as the first beneficiary, as it has long pursued separation. Such a collapse would present both an opportunity to solidify its claim to independence and a serious challenge to its long-term security and economic stability. Puntland would follow closely, relying on its strategic geography, access to the sea, control of ports, and extensive foreign relations, placing it ever closer to functioning as an independent state. Jubaland would also benefit, supported by its border with Kenya and the commercial importance of Kismayo port, making closer political and economic alignment with Nairobi increasingly likely. In contrast, administrations such as Galmudug and Hirshabelle would be among the most vulnerable, as they rely heavily on fragile clan balances and lack strong independent economic or security foundations. Southwest State, despite its valuable agricultural lands in Bay and Bakul, would face significant threats from armed groups already entrenched in the region, placing its future stability in serious doubt. While none of Somalia's neighbors would fully benefit from such a collapse, each would pursue its own interests. Ethiopia, whose long-standing objective has been to prevent the emergence of a strong Somali state, would nonetheless face severe consequences in the form of security threats and large-scale refugee flows. Kenya would seek to expand its influence in Jubaland, but would simultaneously confront increased insecurity, armed group activity, and an unstable border. Djibouti might temporarily face reduced port competition, yet a far greater danger would loom in the form of maritime insecurity and instability in critical international shipping lanes. Some regional and international actors view a collapsing Somalia as easier to manipulate, even though it remains impossible to fully control. A weakened Somali state would struggle to resist external influence, allowing foreign actors easier access to its resources and strategic locations. Nowhere would the consequences be more visible along Somalia's coastline. Somalia's maritime domain represents the most critical battleground of future geopolitical competition in the region. If the state collapses, piracy could return on a large scale. Foreign naval bases could proliferate along the coast, and Somali waters could fragment into competing zones of control. Such a development would disrupt regional stability and global trade routes alike. Ultimately, the collapse of Somalia would not resolve the Horn of Africa's problems, it would multiply them. History shows that when a state collapses, its neighbors are inevitably affected, yet they are rarely able to manage or contain the outcome. Federal states would evolve into mini-states. Mogadishu would lose authority, clan conflicts would intensify, armed groups would expand, natural resources would be looted, and Somali unity would drift further apart. The Horn of Africa would enter a prolonged period of instability, transforming Somalia from a fragile state into the central fault line of regional and global power struggles.